Bible seriously. I don't have an answer for these things. What happened here? Well, it's a story about how, notice how Israel is, Jacob is called Israel mostly here. Shechem, line 7, had insulted Israel by raping Jacob's daughter. And Shechem is both a person and a city, just like in northern Syria. And Hamor. I told you about Stephen's speech where he talks about buying the field that Abraham bought from someone, the son of Hamor, or something like that, where Stephen makes that incredibly misinformed mistake. I don't want to call it a blooper, that's for you to decide. I would, in an unpolite conversation, maybe refer to it like that. And it just shows the person writing that hadn't read his Bible very carefully. I mean, I don't think Stephen even existed myself, and I don't think he ever made a speech like that, but that's another long story. Read my James, a Brother of Jesus book, and you'll see why Stephen never existed, and who Stephen is an overwrite. There are overwrites there. There are things that are overwritten over other stories that we can tell, that we know about. And then the editors overwrite them with something more attractive to their audience, just like a Hollywood scriptwriter would do. So anyway, that's another study entirely, and we got enough trouble with this text. Anyway, it's another, actually this looks like an Elohist story, even though it's quite a good story, it's an attractive story. Anything that have to do with sex and circumcision and stuff like that, people like. It's pretty earthy. And this is a rape. And it's the vengeance that Jacob's sons take. Jacob is willing to make a treaty with Shechem, 13. They want, it's one of these like, I just saw a thing on Discovery Channel about kidnapping brides out in Kyrgyzstan and Tashkent in Central Asia. You know, in large parts of the world, it's a fine to kidnap women and try to force them to marry you. That's part of the marriage process. And something like that is going on here. That they've tried to, I think, it's a kidnap marriage, raping her, but it's a kidnap marriage because he says, look, we want to marry her. It's okay. There's no problem. Even though rape is theoretically taking place, it's a rape by people who want to marry her. But Jacob is willing to sort of, he doesn't want trouble. As usual, Jacob's always very slippery and cagey. But he's got some sons here who are not prepared to do that. They said, we can't give our sister to an uncircumcised man. That would disgrace us. They have to all circumcise themselves if they want to be in our family. Remember, it said anyone traveling with Abraham and so on. So they went so far even to agree to that. Again, it's not a good story about the Israelites. It's more, so the Shechemites aren't innocent either. They rape people and they want to marry them. On the other hand, Jacob's sons are going to, as Jacob finally says it, you put me in a bad smell among these people. Because when they're, after they agree to do all this, the whole town, line 24, on the third day, as I told you, it's not very easy for grown-up people to do this sort of thing when they're still all in pain, 2 of his sons. And we're going to see how each of the sons becomes disqualified as we move along here in the narrator's presentation from being the principal person, if you want to. Well, Levi is an important son in terms of the priesthood. Anyway, we don't think of this as a very priestly story. So Simeon and Levi took their swords, 25, and went through the camp, the town, and killed all the males. Of course, they had done this. Well, I think you'd get that in the Middle East today, if in some areas. I think it could happen under the Al-Qaeda regime. So this is not necessarily new behavior for the modern Middle East either. That's very, anyway, they pillaged the place, and they took the flocks, and they carried off all what there was. They looted everything. And Jacob said to his son, Simeon and Levi, you have done me harm. You put me in a bad odor or smell or a bad reputation with the people of this land, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, And look, you know, I'm weak, I don't have a lot of people, and they will unite and destroy us. They said, is our sister to be treated like a whore or a prostitute? That's the end of the story. That's quite a good story, even though it's pretty nasty. Don't you think? It's a, you know, it's a memorable story. So they go to Bethel, and that's, we all know, that's the way Abraham went down, Shechem to Bethel, and that's where Bethel means house of God, northern God. And they put an altar there, but, you know, God had already put it, there was an altar already put there several times by Abraham, if you recall. So, again, that's where God appeared to you when you were fleeing your brother Esau. So, I don't know, you can try to count up the number of altars that were stuck down here in Bethel in various points of the narrative. And so this narrative does not hang historically very well, you know, as a sequential thing. It's pieces taken from different traditions. So that's not so bad. At least, one thing they haven't done is they haven't rewritten it. See, the Gospels, I believe, have been rewritten. But these are, I'll give them credit for that. They just took what they had and kept it. You know, here's they stitched it together, but they didn't alter it. This is the tradition we have. Even though it contradicts another thing, too bad. And again, I can't cut it up as easily as I did the earlier stuff. Now Jacob gets some promises here. When he builds an altar to God at Bethel, again, that's the shrine of the north. And he had wrestled there. And finally, he took the idols that his wife had taken and buried them under the oak tree. That's for sure a tradition of the shrine under the oak tree at Shechem. Oh, hello, traveler, worshiper. You know what we have here under this tree here? The idols that Rachel took when she came. By the way, that shows these stories are quite old. The stories about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and so on. Because if a shrine there is not a recent shrine, and they have these traditions associated with that shrine, that means that the traditions probably go back another 500 years before that. So these things may actually have had something like this may have actually. People are already commemorating it in an oral way before it even gets written down. You follow what I'm trying to say? So if you have a shrine where they say, hey, see that oak tree here? Well, when was that shrine? I don't think it can be much later than the Joshua period or the David period, before the temple was built in Bethel. So if you had a shrine there, some kind, and the priest there said, oh, well, we have the idols that Rachel took from her house.